Welcome to Guitar Gavel, a place for people who love guitars. These are conversations with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, techs, and collectors about their guitar journey and their love of the instrument. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and be sure to sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com. Welcome to the Guitar Gavel podcast. Thank you for joining. Thank you for using your time, spending your time and hanging out with us. That's a big deal and that's a big commitment. So I wanted to say thank you. I'm David Still. I'm your host and I'm so happy to have another one of my LinkedIn brethren guests. For those of you that are kind of part of our little LinkedIn community, you will be no stranger to Christos. And he joins us from Australia. So we're recording. It's Friday evening here stateside. It's Saturday morning. In his neighborhood, and I couldn't be more delighted. Christos, thanks so much for being a guest and spending your Saturday morning hanging out and sharing your guitar journey. Thanks so much and welcome.
Thank you very much, David. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast, and I'm really excited to be here. It's not every day that I get an opportunity like this to discuss something that is so passionate to my core. So thank you very much, brother. Thank you.
Oh man, dude, all my pleasure. Thank you, man. And I kind of tell all the guests before offline, like, hey, we're going to jump right in. I kind of have the lead in question, and then everything takes care of itself from there, generally speaking. And that's basically, man, tell us how to get started. First delve into music or your first guitar, your influences, and take it away from there, and I'll do my best to guide you if you get sideways, man.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you. It sort of set the scene. My parents emigrated from Greece back in the late 60s, and they had this sort of takeaway. They used to call it milk bars back then, sort of takeaway, hot foods, burgers, shakes, fries, and all that stuff. But it was right in the middle of this beautiful, brand new shopping complex in Bondi, just not far away from Bondi Beach. And I was around 6-7 years old at the time. And back then, when I had holidays or summer holidays specifically, there was no such thing as summer vacation. It was a real luxury for us kids to be looked after by someone else and have activities. And because my parents worked so long and so hard, they said, well, you're coming to the shop because no one's at home to look after you. So you're going to have to work with us or spend time just loitering around the shopping centre. Next to my dad's shop was this hi-fi store that sold TVs, stereos, and you name it. And one day, David, I was just sitting there with my hand, head on my hand, tired that I had to get up, 4 o'clock in the morning to help my father, go to the business, set up the cook foods and so forth and get the shop ready for the day. Then there it was. All of a sudden, 4 grown men in outlandish costumes with war paint just come on TV. It was Kiss. and David, I went from like this to, what is this? Who are these people? So I start cranking up the volume of this TV. And in those days, you can remember the TVs were in these beautiful wooden frame, it was like part of the household furniture. Yes. The sales guy, Craig, comes over to me and goes, Christos, turn it down. You're going to frustrate the customers and management. And I say, Craig, who is this? He goes, oh, they're just a bunch of idiots from New York City. They call themselves Kiss. It's like a bunch of idiots. And, he was into Supertramp at the time, which is, fantastic. But compared to Kiss, a different market. Yeah. And then across from us was a record store. And I went straight in there and I was looking at Kiss albums and I said, can you put this on for me, please? Can you play it? I'll put the headphones on. He put on Kiss Destroyer and he played Detroit Rock City. And then after that, that was it. The rock drug, the rock amphetamine had just gone into me. It's never left since. And when I heard that beautiful guitar solo harmonized between Ace Frehley and Paul Stanley in that song, that classical flamenco inspired, I would play to my parents and they were like, wow, can you just play that back again? And even though they hated that Kiss, they thought it was devil's music, but I would play them snippets and they were like, what is this? And then that really prompted me to start learning the classical guitar because I was grew up in a very conservative Greek Orthodox family. That type of music and electric guitar was seen as the devil's music. So I tried to sort of strategically transition from the classical guitar, because in those days, Greek and Italian families would showcase their children to their visitors who could play the classical guitar, the violin, the piano accordion, the piano. So I started playing the classical guitar whilst I was learning classical music, I was also trying to learn the Kiss songs on the classical guitar. And then it wasn't until about a few years later and that I bought my first electric guitar. The brand was called Torch, and it was a David Gilmour inspired guitar. It was black with a maple fretboard. Cost me like about $250 at the time. But you bought the guitar, a gig bag, a strap, you got a lead with it, set of strings, and it's just sort of that sort of starters pack.
Yes.
But from there, I tried to learn as many songs as I could. And Ace Frehley was my biggest idol at the time. And when I saw his guitar, splashing out, spewing out fireworks and smoke and all that stuff, I was like, this is extraterrestrial. This is not human. These are gods from another planet that have descended to inspire us. And then about
so how
6 years
old
Sorry?
were you when you first heard Kiss? How old were you then when it all started? You may have said,
David, I would have been about 7 years old, which was crazy. I was like the Linda Blair of our neighborhood. It was like I was possessed. There was something wrong with me. I wasn't listening to kids' pantomimes and stuff like that. I was listening to Kiss, and anything that I bought, like Kiss cassettes, magazines, I had to hide them away because if my father got to them, he would probably chuck them out.
That's great. Did you get the dolls, any of the memorabilia that Kiss produced? Did you? Yeah. And do you still have any of it?
Look, you know what? I sold them. I sold them off, or I gave them away to younger children that were sort of growing up and being inspired. That sort of new generation. Friends of mine who have children that were like really into Kiss, and I thought, you know what? I think there's nothing better than handing down something that can provide some meaningful experience and enjoyment to someone's life. So like, here you go, take it. Not knowing that, if they were probably made in Japan, those dolls, and they probably carry a street value of a lot more. But I'm glad that I gave them away, and I sold all my vinyl records in the end. But yeah, it's I wish I would have kept them. But having said that, vinyl's really making a resurgence in Australia here now.
When you got the first guitar, the first electric, you said Torch. That was
Torch, yes.
Yep, the brand. And did you go straight to trying to learn all the Kiss solos that you could?
Yes, I tried to learn. Detroit Rock City was my first and foremost one that I wanted to learn, and then I tried to learn the songs. Like Shout It Out Loud. That album, Destroyer, was seminal, and even though it wasn't the first Kiss album I bought, I actually bought the best of the solo albums. So when they released their solo albums back, I think in 1979, they did a best of it, which I believe was only released for Australia, for the Australian market. And I got that back in 1979. I would have been about 8 years old then, David. Cost me about $6, which back then was like enough to buy yourself an acre of land. And but Kiss being Kiss, the masters of marketing, it had a poster in there, had stickers in there, it had all this, and I put it on my dad's record player, and I had to work just as hard to buy new needles because I was wearing out the needle because I was playing, the songs.
That is great. And I'm just curious, and then want to hear about what happened to the Torch guitar and where you went from there. Did your parents ease into or accept you listening to Kiss? Did they ever get cool with it, or was it always like kind of taboo for them?
Yeah, initially it was, and I did have some rather heated discussions with my parents, especially my father. He was good with it because I got my musical ability from my dad. My father used to play the acoustic guitar for his local town band in his village in Greece. So he was musically, and he was awesome. He was a hot harmonica player. He could play blues to traditional Greek folk music. He was just like legend. It was more my mother who was like, we can't give society an excuse to bring us down. She was very societal, conscious. Whilst my father was like, you know what, let him go, and stuff like that. And my father used to tell me how he used to love listening to the Stones, the Beatles. So I had that connection there with him. It was really that my mother was sort of influencing it. But they respected me because I went out and worked for it. I never asked my parents, can you give me money to buy a guitar? Can you give me money to buy an album or an amp or anything like that? So as much as there was that tension, there was also that mutual respect that, okay, you know what, we don't agree with it, but at least you went out and worked for it yourself and you've earned it, you know.
Yeah. I don't, just as a one-off, and we're born in the same decade, I believe, but my parents never gave me any money that I ever remember to buy anything on my own. So I'm sure at some point I was helped for something, but in terms of, that kind of stuff, absolutely not. If I wanted anything, I had to earn it. I mean, I had to earn the money and then go buy it. So yes. All right. So back to the torch. You got the torch. You're starting to get your shredding skills, because I've seen those on your YouTube videos. How long did you have the torch, and about what age were you when you got that, and then what came next?
Yeah, I bought the torch when I was around 15 or 16, because up until that time I was playing the classical guitar, and then I started to see all the sharp design guitars, like, you know, your Gibson Explorers and, you know, the super shredders with the pointy headstocks, and I was like, no, I think this Fender Strat style is a bit antiquated in comparison to what was coming out in the 80s. So I went down to my local music store and I bought an Epiphone or Epiphany Explorer, and it was black, but it was a metallic crystal black finish, and it was just absolutely awesome. And it had a Floyd Rose inspired tremolo.
Yeah.
And that's when and around that time, that's when Van Halen released their Live Without a Net album, VHS video, should I say. And I would sit there and I would just play along to Eddie's, you know, Eruption and Summer Nights and all, you know, Why Can't This Be Love and all that. And that became my mainstay guitar for a while. And I love that guitar, and it had a really awesome sound for something that was made, I think, in the Far East. It had a really nice feel and tone to it.
That's sweet. Yeah. You know, it's when you're a teenager, and I think I was having this conversation with my father-in-law just over a week ago. He's a harmonica player too, and he's very good, but he's later in life. He started playing about 12 or 13 years ago, and trying to get his 10,000 hours in. And he's not too far off. I mean, he's very, very good. And he turned 70 this year. But when you are 13, 17, 18, and you can just, you know, get out of school and hide in your bedroom. If you're an introvert, you don't want to play around the neighborhood with the kids and just like get into the music. You just have so much time.
Yes.
And typically not as much responsibility.
Yes.
I mean, I worked in high school. I started working when I was 14, but I didn't work every day. I mean, we just all had so much more time, and you can sit and do what you just described. Like, I couldn't imagine with two little kids, I'm just going to play along with this for the next 4 hours. I don't have 4 hours, you know?
Definitely. And it's interesting that you say that, David, because for most part of that early development in my ability to play the electric guitar, it was actually underpinned by my ability to learn the classical guitar. So what I did, I transcribed or transcended a lot of the techniques from the classical guitar to the electric guitar. But I was sort of floundering. I think the way that I was approaching it at the time probably wasn't as structured as I was taken through my tutor with my classical guitar. So by the time I got married, when I was like in my mid to late 20s, I was sort of like floundering. You know, I was learning, but not learning at the pace that I wanted to. But then when I got married in my sort of mid 20s, for those next 4 years before we moved to the UK, every morning that I would get up, I would practice, I would study, I would, you know, read musical theory, read what is legato, what is staccato, and all that stuff. When I would come home, I would literally, you know, just take off my corporate clothes and put on something daggy, and then from that time till midnight and miss out dinner and just play and play and play. And I think that because I had my approach with a much more mature outlook than as I was a teenager, I really accelerated, and that's where I built up my, as you rightly say, perfectly say, 10,000 hours of you know, practicing. And it was that point that I really honed in and really focused, like, you know, look, I think I wasted enough time not getting to where I want to. Now I've really got to put in the work and really learn the guitar and the fundamentals of it.
And then kids.
Yes, and then her kids, yes.
So you had the Epiphone Explorer, and what did that last you for a while? And did you in love with Gibson / Epiphone at that time, or was it whatever?
Yeah, funny enough, I never really fell in love, especially during the 80s, with the Les Pauls. If anything, I really didn't like them. I think they just look like they were the wrong guitar image for the scene that was in the hair metal era of, I love the BC Riches, the Jacksons, the Charvels, the Ibanez RGs. They were my favorite go-to staple guitars. And so much so that I decided to trade in the Epiphone for a electric hot pink Kramer with, the pointy headstock, the gleaming, glowing chrome hardware. Yeah, and it was like, and when I showed my friends, they were like, wow, man, what is this, man? And I even had fellow musicians going, listen, man, I've got a gig this Friday. Can I borrow your Kramer? And I said, no. So that was my sort of first foray into the Super Strat or the Super Shredder guitar. And then I finally upgraded to a RG, sort of Joe Satriani inspired. It's the same guitar that he has on his album cover. It's a white RG, but it's sort of like a square cut. It wasn't like the round profiled cut bodies that he has. And I think it was an RG 440. I had that for quite a long time. That was a beautiful guitar, made in Japan. It had I think one of the first series Edge tremolos by Ibanez. It just, the quality, the craftsmanship was just impeccable. And I had that for quite a long time.
And is that one you still wish you had?
Yes. Yeah. I sold that in the end to buy, I was actually downgrading, which looking back on it was a silly mistake. But yeah, I wish I really kept that because, those Japanese Ibanez 80s guitars do go for a small fortune still in Australia here.
Yes, and they are here as well, especially the mid, but the early 80s, the Artist series, late 70s, early 80s. And they're beautiful, beautiful guitars, and Ibanez still makes wonderful stuff, of course. So you got the hot pink Kramer. I'm gonna have to Google this, man, because that's legit. That is pure 80s right there. What did you stay on kind of the Super Strat shredder train for a while? You'd started to talk about transition, but yeah,
I did. Even to the point when I moved to the UK in 2002. When I first started working, a gentleman who was also a passionate guitarist said to me, Christos, if you ever get an opportunity, you must go down Denmark Street, just off Tottenham Court Tube Station. I said, why, Malcolm? He said, oh, it's just riddled with guitar stores. You have to go and see it. I said, okay, well, I'll check it out. Well, lo and behold, there was a train strike in London, which is a common occurrence. So I had to walk to what they called a National Rail train station to, which is a long distance train ride, to try and get my way back home because the tube was actually in strike. On my way there, and this is 2003, we didn't have GPS. Everything was from a paper map.
Yes.
I'm walking to Marylebone Station at the time, and on the way there, it was like a long walk. I said, Denmark Street. Man, that's what Malcolm was saying to me. It's like, I've got to go and check this out. I walked down there, David, and to the left of me and to the right, it was just guitar store, guitar store, guitar store, guitar store. And that's the beauty of London. If you go to certain spots, they're very centralized in a particular commodity or product in a particular street. So that was like a mental engravement. Now, I'm not going to forget this. I'm coming back. I came back and I got on well with one of the store managers there. And he said to me, look, plug in a Les Paul into this 1975 50-watt hand-wired Marshall and let me run a Maxon overdrive pedal in the front of it. And that's when I had that epiphany of that I am now a Les Paul person. When I was playing, David, I was like, and they had 2 double glazed glass doors as soundproofing. And I just, there was no master volume in those Marshalls back then. Like you really had to crank it. And the 50-watt amp with a vintage Maxon overdrive pedal and the Les Paul. And after that, I just went through this Les Paul craziness, which lasted about 20 years until, like I said, I sold them. I had customs, I had traditionals, I had standards, I had a Les Paul / model that I bought here in Australia, which I wish I kept. And I think that if I do get the opportunity to buy them again, I'd love to get my hands on another Les Paul as well.
What did you have a favorite out of the bunch? I know that's a tough question.
Oh, wow, David. God, you put me on the spot here. There was a Les Paul custom that Gibson released in a limited batch, but only in select colors. There was a trans red, which was sort of like the wine red, but a more brighter color that really accentuated the flame. And that one I love. And that had a proper ebony fretboard. And I love ebony fretboards because I find that my fingers corner on rails with ebony. And before they started to release the rich light, that sort of, man-made, ebony-like fretboard. And I've always loved a custom because the block inlay from the first fret really makes the neck or the fretboard of the Les Paul seem longer than it is. Mm. Whilst your standard, you've got your trapezoid inlay starting from the 3rd fret and all the way down to the 21st. Whilst with a custom, it's got the block inlay from the 1st fret and it just makes it look so long. And I don't like scratch plates on my Les Pauls because when I remove them, I've got to remove, there's a screw hole on the top and then on the side, and sometimes underneath the bolt indents on the body. But these particular customs, Gibson released them without the scratch plate attached. So when I saw it, it was like a match made in heaven for me.
Yes.
I mean, it cost me a fair whack. And I had that for about 6-7 years. And I wish I would have, that was my favorite one. The tone, it weighed about almost 10 and a half, 11 pounds. Like it was a heavy guitar. And I love my Les Pauls to be heavy.
Well, good. They are. It's funny. Real quick. Hate to interject, but this was really funny. My wife and I, we were in Nashville last weekend, and we were at a show last Friday night a week ago. And I don't want to call out the artist, one of our favorites, but he is starting to get a little older, and he mainly, he's a rhythm player, of course, the lead singer. And mostly all acoustic, like 18 out of 20 songs he's playing a Martin. And he switched up towards the end of the show and put on a Les Paul, and like he about stumbled. It was like I turned to the guy behind me because we had been talking earlier guitars, and it's like, dude, he just added, freaking 8 pounds of weight, and his shoulders just weren't ready for it, man. Yeah. So I remember that so vividly, and then commenting just a week ago. But because they're beastly guitars. You kind of were talking about the one that you sold. Was there or the ones that you sold? Was there ever one that you saw in a store, Les Paul or whatever it was, that maybe was in the price range, could have been in the price range had you stretched it, but you sat on your hands, the one that got away? Do you have one, or is there like 20 of those?
Oh yeah, there was this beautiful Les Paul standard back in around that area of Denmark Street in London. There was another store down the road called Soho Soundhouse, and they had this beautiful Honeyburst Les Paul standard. And even though they said on the spec sheet that it was a AAA flame, it was like a 10,000 A flame. And the flame on that was just, and it was so perfectly book matched. Sometimes you get some Les Pauls, as I'm sure you've seen, David, in your experiences, where the book matching has gone horribly wrong. But when it goes right, it is just, you don't want to play the guitar, you just want to look at it like, when Wayne's World, he goes, yes, this will be mine. And I thought, you know what? Let me think about it. I literally went down the road to grab something to eat. I came back and it was gone from the window.
Oh man!
And I ran inside almost in tears, and I said to the manager, I said, "What happened to that Honeyburst?" He goes, "Mate, I just sold it. The guy just left." And I was like, and everything about it, David. I mean, the frets look like they were polished and finished off good. The side binding on the frets were aligned. There was no gaps between the frets and the side binding. The binding work around the body was perfect. It actually had Grover tuners, not those traditional Gibson snotty green ones, the vintage style ones. And it was like, that was the one that really got away from me. And it was a good price as well.
Sounds
So
like it. I mean, I've got a pretty good visual as you described it. It sounds amazing.
yeah, and it was just, and I've had that a few times, but that one really stands out, as the one that really got away. Yeah.
Well, playing wise, going back to kind of your honeymoon years, in your marriage, and you're in the UK, no kids, playing a lot. Where's it gone since then? And have your, I think I know, looking at your Def Leppard shirt, the musical taste may not have changed. I mean, nor has mine, but it is a question because, I don't listen to music quite as loud as I did. I mean, I used to crank it, when I was a teenager. It's like, I want everyone to hear it in my car. Pull up to and your genres change. You can mellow, all of these things that have, in terms of what you like to play now. Any changes, or is it still strong with your?
Do you know, I when I first saw Kiss, Ace Frehley was my guitar god, but it wasn't until Van Halen arrived in Australia when they released Jump around 1984 that Eddie Van Halen really inspired me to play like him. Whilst Ace, I wanted to learn Kiss songs because I wanted to, but Eddie Van Halen inspired me to really play guitar. But then I had this really pivotal turning point where I went over to my cousin's house one day and I said to him, "Have you heard this new band called Van Halen?" Because he was more into like Led Zeppelin, Sabbath and Purple. And he goes, "Have I heard of Van Halen? Have you heard of this?" And he puts on Eruption, and he had this brand new stereo, these big German-made Bose speakers, and he connected up Eruption, and I kid you not, David, I was getting scared. And that was really much the turning point that made me go down that path. And I'm still on it, that icy cold, finger shredding, music, because I see that as virtuosic. Mm-hmm. But over the years, I've also come to appreciate other guitarists as well, notably, Vinnie Moore, Dave Murray. Dave Murray, I love his legato. And because 90% of my soloing is legato and using the front pickup, Dave Murray is, for me, the master of legato. Obviously, your Malmsteens. Steve Vai I never really got into. Joe Satriani I like. Greg Howe, I really like some of his earlier material. But for me, it was that more sort of classic Randy Rhoads. Oh, yeah, I can't go by without Randy Rhoads. Jakey Lee was another one. And I just love the brutality of Zakk Wylde. When he plays, how that guitar's still in one piece. Having said that, it's also about the melody for me. And so there's a lot of pop songs that I love, especially from the 80s, like, Howard Jones, No One Is to Blame. I love that song. It's melodic, it's tranquil. But for me, back in the 80s, a lot of those hair metal bands were really pushing that melody with virtuosity, with that crisp, clean production sound above any other genre. And that's what's made me stick with that as well. I'll jam along to other songs, like I'll jam along to Lady Gaga's Bad Romance and what's that other one, Edge of Glory. I love it because, she packs in a lot of melody into her music above other artists. But for me, the sound of the distorted electric guitar, nothing does it more for me than that. You could have a heavy metal band, but once you remove the electric guitar, it doesn't sound like a heavy metal band anymore.
No, yeah.
And so whilst I've expanded and broadened my horizons to, even on the bass, I play more like Steely Dan. I've posted that as well. And, Counting Crows, Mr. Jones is another one. Again, it's melody, it's melody. But, I've always, my core is always going to be that hard rock, heavy metal, guitar shredding sound as well.
You can't deny your roots. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
When it's your first love, it will always be your first love, and that is the best in the way it should be. And it's fun because our parents, your parents, my parents, and others similar to age to us, they didn't get to experience what we got to experience for them, but they don't have the appreciation for the distortion that we do. Well, speaking of those basses, do you want to give us a little tour of what you've got stashed behind you?
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully, I'll try and line it up so you can get a really good view.
Sure, and I will guide you if you're off the mark. Yes, you're dialed in right there.
Okay, so this is my Fender Stratocaster player series. It's made in Mexico. So here this is my project guitar where I've removed the stock humbuckers and put a Seymour Duncan Jeff Beck and a jazz pickup. I've changed the vintage bridge saddles with Goto made in Japan bridge saddles. And underneath here in the cavity, I've installed a system known as a Obsidian wire. Obsidian wire is a New Zealand firm, and they make kits for Les Pauls, Strats, basses that allow you to change pickups without soldering. So there's like a little spring-loaded mechanism which all the pickup wiring goes into, and you just use a little screwdriver to release the wire and insert the new wire of the new pickup, and it's simple as that. So there's no fumes, no harsh fumes of soldering. And then if I can just show you here, I've got Fender locking tuners on my guitar. Oops, there you go. And then I've got a string tree, if you can see it, just there, just to allow the string, the low B and the high E string to move much easier. And this particular guitar sounds really, really nice. It's got a really nice tone to it. It's the bottom of the model range of the Fender Stratocasters, but thankfully the work that I've done to it makes it sound really, really nice. And this is something that I could take on stage and just thump it away and not care if I get a few scratches on it or something like that, as opposed to an expensive Gibson. So then I'll move now to my bass guitars. Let me just see if you can you see that, David? Or
Yep, you look good.
Let me just do it this way.
Sure.
So this is my Fender Precision Bass Player Series, and I've got a set of Seymour Duncan quarter pounders in there, and you'll see the bridge. I've got a hip shot kick-ass bridge, and that adds so much tone compared to the vintage bridge. And also inside, I've got the Obsidian wire circuitry, which again is solderless. But this combination of the bridge, the Obsidian wire circuitry, and the Seymour Duncan pickups is such a lovely combination. And I love the finish on this because you've got that glitter silver, sort of like that disco ball from the 70s. I don't know if you can see that.
See it. No, the light's hitting it great. I mean, it's a really, really slick looking finish. You're right.
And I've got round flat rounds on this Fender flat rounds. Really, really love the guitar. And now what I'll do is I'll show you. This is my latest edition. This is not light. This is my Fender Player Series jazz bass. And again, I've got Seymour Duncan quarter pounders, replace the stock pickups. I've got the hip shot kick-ass bridge. And again, underneath the cavity, I've got the Obsidian wire tone circuitry. And this one sounds really, really nice. And you'll see the first volume pickup I've got all the way full, and the second volume pickup I've got pretty much turned down, because what I found was the DC resistance of these pickups was around 12 K. But once you turn them both to full, they literally halve. But the way that I've got it now, I'm getting maximum output from both pickups. So the bridge pickup is turned down low, whilst the middle pickup is turned all the way up. And I think that's where the sweet spot is for bass guitars. It's a middle pickup. And I've got a set of Labella bass strings, and these bass strings, they're very expensive, but God, they feel beautiful. They just play nice. They feel beautiful. And this colour, David, inspired me from the first time I saw Yngwie Malmsteen with his yellow Fender Strats. And if I can just show you also some effects pedals that I've got.
Yes.
This is my go-to. This is my go-to chorus pedal, the Mxr Stereo Chorus. I cannot recommend this enough. I'm not much of a pedal person, but when I do, I love to use chorus to add that effect. And the way that I've got it set now, it just really complements my playing style. And it really brings out, especially like pinched harmonics, so much better than when I'm not using it. And it comes loaded with a cheat sheet for all your favorite artists like Andy Summers and Alex Lifeson and stuff like that. That really took the chorus pedal to another level. And then my go-to overdrive pedal is the Maxon Vintage Pro Series, made in Japan. This thing's about the size of a brick. It's like twice the size of my head. But it really brings out the harmonics of the sound and of the guitar, and just makes the guitar really sing. I don't have it set very high, and I sort of blend the overdrive with my amplifier, which is an Engel Richie Blackmore. I'll just take my phone back now. So amplifier-wise, I use Engel, and I've been using Engel for many years now. And I've got the Engel Richie Blackmore Signature 100, which is, funny enough, it's actually built off his original Marshalls from the Made in Japan tour. So when Engel first released them, they had them loaded with 6550 valves, which is what the Marshall Majors had back then. Okay. And they were 200 watts, whilst Engel rated them back then at 150 watts. But now they've got 5881 valves, and it just sounds like that hot-rodded vintage Marshall, which is, for me, the holy grail of rock tones. And then my speaker cabinet, I've got a 212 horizontal Engel cab loaded with vintage 30 Celestians, and they're actually front-loaded. So they've loaded to the front of the baffle board as opposed to the rear like normal cabinets are, speaker cabinets are. And for me, it really projects the sound so much better than than let's say remounted speakers. And I first came across it when I was at the London Guitar Show, and the German amplifier brand Diesel. I first tried a front-loaded speaker cabinet through the VH4, which was a beastly amplifier, and that really, Peter Diesel was there, and he was telling me all the different harmonics and all this and all the really geeky stuff, and I was like, you sold me. You don't have to get technical. You sold me.
So do you feel like you're set then with your amp and pedal setup? Like you're good. You don't no more.
Yeah,
needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always. I really admired Eddie Van Halen, because he was like, even when I've reached the tone that I want, I'm always going to keep looking. That tone quest stuff for me, David, is a never-ending journey. Even when I found it, a particular tone, what I do is I preserve it, and then I go looking for another one. So if I'm really got my eyes on the actual Eddie Van Halen chorus pedal from Mxr, and I've heard some really nice reviews and tones on YouTube, and that's something that I'd like to get my hands on. And also, speaking of chorus, there's a Japanese company called Free the Tone.
Okay.
And they've got this chorus pedal called the Tri-Avatar, and I kid you not, it looks like a circuitry from a Boeing 747, like a cockpit mounted dials and controls. That for me, I mean, it costs about $580 here in Australia. That for me would be the tone that I would love to get my hands on.
Sweet. All right. Well, I mean, you got a plan, just got to execute, over time. Right?
Yeah.
Easy it up. Going back a little bit to your guitar journey, and sorry to jump around on you. Did you play in a band at all, or play out, or just always to yourself?
When I was in the UK, they had this really excellent program called Weekend Warriors, and I just came across it by chance. And what they did, it was actually an American design program, which kudos to the Americans for thinking of this. What they tried to do was get the 35s and over to register at their local music store. And then for a flat fee, I think it was about £100 back then, you got 5 sets of 3-hour rehearsals at a studio. And all you had to do was just bring a guitar, and the music store provided everything for you. They would place you with other musicians according to your similarities in terms of musical genres and so forth. And then you'd rehearse for those 5 sessions, and then they would bring all the bands together one evening at a local venue in front of all your friends, family, relatives, and that was like 300-400 people alone. And I did that a few times. And then on the second time that I did that, we actually formed a band, and we were sort of playing locally in the counties of Hertfordshire and some other counties, sort of surrounding counties of London. And we used to just go and play rock covers. We did a few originals, but it was by and large, your Van Halens, your Thin Lizzies, bit of AC/DC and all that sort of era, a golden era of music. So we did that for a while, and it was great. And I also had the privilege of working with a journalist from the UK, and a real well-known Adam, what's his name? Sandel, his surname was. Oh, I forgot his first name, but he was a freelance music journalist, and he appeared on the BBC. And I really loved, playing with other musicians. So we did have a few gigs, and we also played at a summer festival in front of about 3,000 people as well, because the music store said, look, you guys are one of the better performers on the night. There's a music festival coming up. Would you like to play? And we were like, yes, we would. And it was really nice because the curator of the grounds took us underneath where the dressing rooms were, and there was actual engravings from Phil Lynott, from Thin Lizzy, and Scott Gorham as well, and also the guys from 10cc, because they played there back in the 70s. And we were like, wow. And he goes, yeah, we've authenticated this, we've confirmed that this is the actual, and that we don't let people use or bands use this part of the rehearsal room, because it's like very sort of, it's like a mecca of rock royalty there.
No.
Yeah, and it was great, because then what happened was, I sort of, doing that circuit, I started to sort of come into contact with other musicians, and they were like, dude, we like the way you play. Do you want to come play in our band? And so I was sort of, at one point, I was like in about 3 or 4 different bands, and it was like, oh, gee, it's Saturday night. I've got 2 gigs with 2 different bands. What do I do?
How long did that go on? How many years were you able to pull the juggle?
Oh, David, that probably went on for a few years. Yeah. And then, the usual culprits got in the way, work, mortgage, kids. And it was regrettable, because like one of the bands that I was in, we actually had interest expressed by a local booking agent who were like, we really want to start getting you a bit more promoted and getting you out there. And it was like, but, the drum and the basses were like, sorry, guys, I've got other work commitments and all that. And then trying to find the right people with the right mindset and the right technical ability was a real challenge. So we just sort of went our separate ways. And yeah.
Oh, that is how it happens. It's how it dissolves. That weekend warrior concept, that is so awesome. I mean, what a novel idea. And certainly for the music store, there's a little something in it for them. Hopefully you'll buy some instruments. I mean, amps, whatever it is, gear, but they're really just providing a service to players and just supporting the community of musicians, whether they're professional, beginners, or amateurs, and housing that arena. I mean, that is just a really awesome concept. And I remember we kind of exchanged about that in an email before, and it's just fascinating. I wish there was more of it, because when you told me that, I've never heard of anything like that. If it exists somewhere here stateside, I'm unaware. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but I've never met anyone that's talked about it. It
was really fascinating, David, because they estimated, according to their studies, that at least in the UK, musicians were spending anywhere between £3,000 to £5,000, like you say, buying equipment. And that's exactly what I did. I bought an orange 212 cab. I bought a Les Paul at the time as well, and bought some effects and some accessories. And then when you add it up, it was probably around, that between that £3,000 to £5,000, spending spree. And they called us the Warriors, as in the Weekend Warriors. We were entitled to a 10% discount on anything that we bought. It was unrestricted. So, there was even more incentive to get, 10% off of something, especially when you're talking in pounds, as opposed to other currencies.
Yeah. I'll change gears a little bit on you, because we were talking about family prior to hopping on. Any of your kids pick up an instrument, play, do they appreciate what you like to listen to and what you play? Because I mean, like dad's a shredder. He's a metalhead. Do they get it? I guess is maybe the other part of that question too. Are they like, that's a dad?
Nah, exactly. I mean, my kids unfortunately are growing up in that, that Instagram hashtag era, TikTok and all that. And, a lot of the music nowadays, David, it's very manufactured. It's very processed. It's very predictable. And, actually when my son was younger, he really used to love the music that I played, especially the European metal scene. He used to love Hammerfall, a band from Sweden. And, we used to, if I ever used to put DVDs on, he used to love listening to them and watching them play live. But my daughters especially, no, they're into like, Britney Spears and Little Mix and, all that manufactured pop stuff that's just contaminating our children's minds with lack of creativity. But, I think to them now, when I play at home, when I'm playing along to my favorite music, it's just become like that, when you're at home and a car passes your house, it's just like, normal noise to them. They do get a bit aggravated because now when I play bass, there's more of a thumping sound in the house.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person that if I'm going to play rock music or metal, if I'm going to play along to it, I want volume, I want decibels. Right. And I think I'm sort of testing the patience of my family with my bass guitars. but to answer your question, we bought a small Casio keyboard for my youngest, Stephanie, and she's starting to show some interest, but I don't know if it's like a fad or something.
Sure. Well, I speculate that as your kids get older, especially the two older ones, 5 to 7 to 8 years, they'll come around. Like, man, Dad did some pretty awesome stuff. It will happen because and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But that would be my guess. All right, what about? Do you have a bucket list guitar? And it sounds like maybe that Les Paul in the Honeyburst would maybe be on the bucket list. But do you?
Yes, but there's one that I've always had my heart on, David. It's a Gibson Les Paul Custom 1968 reissue, and those ones actually came with a tri-burst finish. So you had the sort of dark amber, then you had like a red ring, and then outside the red ring you had like the black or the dark ring tri-burst finish, and it came in a quilted maple top. And if you ever see it, it's like, wow, this is nice. This is and that for me would have to be my bucket list of guitar. Bearing in mind now, David, a standard Ebony Les Paul Custom in Australia will set you back between $8,000 to $9,000. Yeah. And we're talking, and this is a 68 reissue. So, when you start adding the layers, it's not going to be cheap.
No. It's a shame that it makes it. That's tough.
But that for me, that tri-burst, there's something about that tri-burst on that Gibson Les Paul that when I look at it, it's just like an epiphany moment.
Okay, so if let's say it showed up at your door tomorrow, would you play it or would you look at it?
Oh, I'd have to spend at least a good hour just looking at it because I'm a bit of an OCD freak and I just want to make sure that everything's perfect and so forth. Would I play it? Absolutely. Would I take it out of the house? Absolutely not. No, I would. That you've got your normal Johnny Walker whiskey, but then you've got your 18-year single malt, and that's the one that you preserve and keep. Yeah.
I love it. Yes. Well, I think you've got a little YouTube channel. I say a little YouTube channel where you post a few videos of yourself playing. And I don't know if you want to promote it or not, or just, say where people can find you. But I know you don't have a ton of videos, but it's fun. And if anyone, for those that have made it this far into the podcast, if you want context around Christos's playing, tell them your YouTube channel, where they can find you, because it's worth by far going to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Please subscribe. The more people that I can have, and hopefully, shed some light and inspiration for them to pick up the guitar, whether it's the first time or whether it's an extended absence from the guitar. Please come and join my channel. And I also do product reviews as well of basses, electrics, even bridges as well. Like I've done reviews of the Tone Pros Les Paul bridge and other products as well. But if you just type in my full name, which I think they'll be able to see on the screen on YouTube, Christos Fragias, it'll lead you straight to my channel.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. And I've been there a few times, 4 or 5, but I've missed these reviews, so I'll have to go back and check it out. That's awesome, man. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to lay down straight, man? Now, do it now.
Do it now, or forever hold your peace. I think for me, it's if you're going to play the guitar, or you want to learn to play the guitar, understand why is it that you want to do it. Do you want to do it because you want to join a band, which then takes you on a different trajectory in terms of, there's a lot more commitment, time, investment, and so forth? Or do you want to do it because you just want to play at home like I do, playing along to your favorite music, but also picking up new techniques as you learn new songs as well? But I would also recommend jump across to other instruments. I kick myself for not playing the bass guitar sooner, because I was able to learn songs on the bass guitar that I was probably struggling with on the electric guitar. And then once I learned them on the bass, I could then return back to the electric and learn them much easier. So I do recommend, don't keep yourself pigeonholed into one particular instrument or genre, expand. And the beauty about learning the bass is I could learn songs from, Steely Dan, Counting Crows, as opposed to pure metal songs as well. Another video I posted of Gary Newman's Cars. Diversify your ability. Have your core, but diversify in terms of artists, genres, and even instruments. And now I found that playing the bass, my timing has improved significantly. I really noticed that my timing has improved, but also my ear to understand the rhythm section of a band. And speaking of ear, I definitely recommend you try and do what you can to develop your ear, because I can put on a song and I can tell straight away, D minor, A sharp, C, and so forth. And that's what allows me to learn music much, much quicker. So I think that's probably the best thing I could say for any musician wanting to sort of, take the steps into that journey. Keep yourself adaptable, fluid, but have your fundamental core.
Man, that's great. I'll piggyback on that one notch. I just read 1 or 2 articles recently about learning to play the drums and how that can help a rhythm guitarist especially. It was really fascinating. And you're talking about the bass too. Great points, man. This has been a blast, very enlightening in this conversation. And we may certainly have to do this again. Maybe the next time you give us some live demos of your chops, because I've always enjoyed watching your videos, and I would encourage you to continue to link those into LinkedIn too, because it's a great, great community and a great resource to get it out there. But Christos, thank you so much for your time, man. Really,
thank you.
Really appreciate you hanging out with us, hanging out with me here on your Saturday morning, giving up your Saturday morning. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening and watching and giving us your time. It's, for all of us, time is the most important thing I think we have, other than family, and to be able to give it away and hopefully you enjoyed it and took something away yourself. Christos, we'll leave it from here, man. If you'll hang on just 1 second, I'll close us out and we'll reconvene here in a second. Thanks everybody for sticking around with us. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, man. Thanks again so much for your time, Christos.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to the Guitar Gavel podcast, and a special thanks to Steve Kuykendall for composing this music and being such the great guy and friend that you are. As a reminder, hit the subscribe button and sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com.